This is the Candidly Kim podcast.
Welcome to the Candidly Kim podcast in 2021, and we're joined, of course, by our amazing producer, Doran Barton.
Hi.
You didn't work on that a whole lot over the holiday.
No.
Okay. Okay, it's 2021, Doran, and I'm excited for the new year. How about you after coming off of a really sleepy, kind of no eventful 2020?
I'm cautiously optimistic.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Can you help me get there?
Yeah, that's what I said on, New Year's Day. Cautiously optimistic New Year. Not a happy New Year.
I'm not too optimistic yet. They're definitely hopeful, but no, I don't lean into optimistic yet. I think I'm starting fairly cynical.
Oh, okay.
Maybe.
Well, I didn't want to wish anybody that.
Well, you might just be acknowledging that, though.
Okay.
Because it's probably cynical for a lot of people. So some changes for me, I'll tell you. I've already had a couple of trolley citizens remind me that I should shut up because I'm not in the legislature anymore. How about that?
Are we done? Or we should just not do this anymore?
Yeah, because citizens don't have voices. Only elected officials should be able to speak and express opinions. So now, since I'm just a citizen, I should shut up.
Well, I guess the truth to that is you can't go up and take your spot at your old desk on the floor, but I don't think citizens are restricted from writing letters to the editor, having podcasts, putting signs in their yards, or posting on social media.
So exactly. So I think the reason why, like a big reason why I enjoyed a lot of support from my constituents is that I don't view myself in a caste system of citizens and that I'm somehow on some different level or plane of existence because they elected me to office. I think that one of the things that I valued in my service in the legislature was I really was a representative of the people. So I went and spoke for us collectively. I represented the us, not,
Well, right. You were a citizen activist before you were an elected official.
Absolutely.
And so, but now that you've been an elected official, you need to be quiet.
I know where the dead bodies are, and so I know how some things work up there. Oh yeah, no. And if anything, we named this podcast Candidly Kim podcast. I think being a little less tethered gives me an opportunity, maybe even to be a little bit more candid. So,
well, that's true.
A little bit more unleashed, maybe.
Who are we going to call a tyrant today?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So let's start with some New Year's predictions. Let's go there first. One of my favorite columnists, and I've only been turned on to him for the last maybe 6 months, year or so, is a columnist for Town Hall, frequent columnist for Town Hall, but also a kind of conservative fiction writer named Kurt Schlichter. Now, this guy, he's pretty active on Twitter, which is one reason that I have to stay on Twitter because he's funny. He just makes me laugh. But I'll warn you, he's very irreverent and unfiltered. So, and that's the things I love about him. So he makes, like a lot of writers out there and a lot of political commentators, gives his prediction, and he first bemoans that that's sort of the thing he's supposed to do is give his predictions. Anyway, he starts with, I predict pain.
Pain.
And then he lists his top 10 reasons for the pain. And, there are some of these I just hope he's wrong on, but he doesn't tend to be. But he predicts pain. He's probably right. Starting with next week. Next week could be a very, very painful week for us as we are in the middle of the process of what happens between a November 3rd election to then executing it and making it the thing, having a president declared. And there's a whole lot of space in between that as Americans, we are learning how many steps are actually in between. And I don't think a lot of us even knew about that before. I think November 3rd is an election, and we know who the president is. But did you know, all the steps with of course we knew the role of the electors, but now there's discussion. There was even a court case brought by Representative Gomer that even challenged the role of the vice president in certifying the election, and then what the members of the House and the Senate can do when it comes to certifying, accepting, counting the Electoral College votes. And there's going to be a challenge. So we know that. So we know that a number of members of the House of Representatives are lining up to challenge the electoral votes from up to 7 states, 5 to 7 states. And so the question is the Senate going to go the same way? You do need to have a senator and a rep to be able to challenge the state's votes. And so Senator Hawley stepped out first and said, I'm in. I cannot, I know too much. I cannot accept the votes coming from some of these states.
Is he the only one?
He was the only one as of yesterday, but now Twitter is lighting up with that there are now 11 to 16 new senators who are in discussions about coming on to this plan. I'm really hoping that my Senator Mike Lee is one of those.
You're one senator?
And I do not think that my other senator, Mitt Romney, will be in that camp.
Oh, okay.
Again, he was the only Republican senator to vote to impeach the president, or voted to convict the president. Let's be very clear on that. So he, I don't expect that he's going to challenge the president's loss for a second term when he didn't want the president to serve the current term. But I am hoping that Senator Lee is there. And I'm going to really kind of look to him because I trust his judgment. I also trust his understanding of the Constitution. I also trust that he will make a good analysis of all the facts before him. So, but I've seen some of the facts. And I've actually, as we reported in a previous podcast, actually participated in, we've come to call it the fraud squad in Nevada, where I knocked doors for a couple of days, and every single voter was fraudulent. Everyone. So every door that I found a person behind it was a fraudulent vote. So I've seen it myself. I dabble in data harmonization. So all of a sudden, we have a whole lot of math nerds. Is that PC?
Math nerds.
Math nerds.
Since when are we PC?
But all of a sudden, the math folks out there became some pretty important people with some just deniable modeling formulas. And so I dabble in that world. I'm not one of those. I'm a data harmonizer, so I pull data together and help it make pictures of what's going on with the math. I don't actually do the math, but I understand the role of math in this modeling. And I myself have conducted a number of Benford analyses on some of our elections in our state and have concerns, have questions. But yeah, some of these people, Dr. Shiva, follow him, Dr. Shiva on Twitter. I'm not sure his Twitter handle. We'll put it up on the screen. But he was one of those early ones. For MIT, got some colleagues together, and they started looking at the math behind these votes, and it's just simply not mathematically possible for some of the things to have happened in many of these states, Georgia, Pennsylvania. Of course, we learned this week that Pennsylvania certified their votes with 200,000 more votes than ballots cast. So there's some actual tangible mathematical aspects, but then there are the sort of the formulaic mathematical modeling that just can't, just doesn't exist. So I'm on that side of things, that things are absolutely wrong in this election. At the very least, it's very questionable, but we do have insurmountable evidence. We have undisputed evidence. And so I do expect that my senator, at least one of our senators, I hope they will both review what's in front of them. And I'm hearing that we are over 160 members of the House of Representatives that are prepared to challenge it. And a lot of those are some of our new freshmen that I got to know on the campaign trail. And our own Utah's 4th District, Burgess Owens, is committed to also be on the team challenge. So that's exciting to see, and I'm excited to see some of the people that I did get to know along the campaign trail that are going to be freshmen going in and ready to take on the biggest, probably the biggest decision that they'll ever make is going to be that first one.
Okay, so let's go back to this prediction of pain.
Okay. The prediction of pain. This is what Doran does, is it gets me back to where I started. Okay, he starts with number 10, no Krakens, and I'm not going to list all of these. I'm just going to go through some of mine. You know what? I'm still hoping for the Kraken. I am still hoping that that we know that there is evidence. We know that it is stark. It is alarming. So question now is it enough? Is it in time? And then will the people considering the evidence, frankly, my opinion is, will they have courage to do the right thing? And so we've seen a lot of the court cases go down based on standing. Almost every one of the court cases have had a problem with standing, meaning does the person bringing the case actually, have they been damaged? Have they been harmed? Are they the person who should be bringing the case?
Right, and that's an important distinction, because a lot of my left-leaning friends online will just say, the courts refuse to hear the cases. They don't think there's any merit.
Yeah.
But it really is about standing. It's all technicalities.
It is about standing. And, that's a very personal thing to me. In my life, I was involved in a personal lawsuit where the facts of the case were absolutely overwhelming. I mean, beyond a shadow of any doubt, the bad people would be exposed as the bad people who did bad things. But the case was basically dismissed on standing. I just didn't have standing. So that is an important aspect of this. So there's still some cases out there, and even when all that is said and done, there are legislators that still have a role in some of the challenges before them. A lot of pleas before Arizona and Georgia for the legislatures to take action, and reviewing the evidence and really having a say on whether those electoral college votes continue. I mean, they've been cast, but they can still be challenged. And then the members of Congress then get to review these. So there's still different things, and so I'm still hopeful that yes, it's enough, and yes, it's in time, and yes, there will be people with courage that will consider this. But Kurt says, no Kraken, sorry. It's highly unlikely that any kind of constitutional maneuvers or even the most meritorious court challenge is going to validate Donald Trump's victory in the last election, even though it's painfully clear that he did win and was only deprived of the victory by a combination of incompetence, scams, and outright fraud. And I'm on that train, absolutely. I'm going to skip through a few. Number 8, COVID will continue until we revolt. And now we have a special guest on in a few minutes that we're going to go into a little bit more depth on that whole notion of how COVID and the government's response and the citizens' reactions really we're going to dig in a little bit more into that. But it is such an absolutely dangerous disease and so highly contagious that in New York, people needed to stay home and Times Square be empty on New Year's Eve while the ball dropped. But the mayor could dance on the stage with his wife on New Year's Eve while everybody else had to stay home. So don't know how many more examples we're going to see of rules for thee and not for me in this whole thing.
Yeah, why couldn't they just wear like 3 or 4 masks and, go to Times Square?
Yeah, well, so we have policymakers that absolutely defy their own orders. In some of these areas, not just recommendations, they're orders, they're laws, and but not for them. So they can go eat out at the nice restaurants they want to go eat out at. They can go hop on a plane and go visit their elderly parents because nobody else has elderly parents with health concerns and mental health concerns. Nobody else does, just them. He's predicting another SCOTUS nomination, and thankfully he's not predicting a nomination that stacks the court because holy moly, that would be something. Okay, number 5. I like this one. Woke won't work. Slowly but surely, I think people are getting tired of woke. None of us signed up to be ruled by a bunch of lachrymose sophomores who burst into tears because we insist that they use the right toilet. Even liberals are getting sick of constantly having to navigate the minefield of microaggressions. It's tiresome to always be worried that someone is going to freak out by your perfectly reasonable behavior. Look for a major star of some sort who is too big to cancel to simply refuse to play along anymore, and that may open the door to others. Social justice warrior emperor truly has no clothes. And the second someone points out and laughs at his or her shriveled junk, the entire country will join in the well-deserved mockery. So I like that one.
There's something trending on social media right now that Nancy Pelosi is planning to ban gender terms.
Oh, yes.
Mother, daughter, father, son in House rules.
Yes.
Meanwhile, her Twitter profile describes her as a mother, grandmother, and dark chocolate connoisseur.
And not to mention ice cream, high palate ice cream. So the House has promulgated a new rule that would eliminate gender-specific things and gender-specific roles, and eliminating mother, father, brother, sister, aunt, uncle. It's crazy. I mean, at what point is this just crazy? And what do you replace those with? So, skip through a few more. Number 3, Ghislaine Maxwell will not kill herself. And number 2, I think this one's evident. I think this is one of the most evident things in his predictions is that Trump will be a kingmaker, regardless of what happens on January 6th or January 20th. He's got incredible influence. And so I want to just kind of just take the second to, and we'll talk about this with our guest too, is have you left mainstream media completely?
Oh,
Lauren?
yeah, totally.
Okay, so we're gone. And we even left Fox News. So, I mean, I like to tune into Tucker. Sometimes there are a couple of specific shows I like to watch, but mainly we found Pluto TV channel, which has, they are the alternatives to the mainstream media. So that's where you get Newsmax, you get Steve Bannon. So if you're not following Steve Bannon on Twitter and on his podcast, The War Room Pandemic, that's where you're going to get the news. Who else? One America News
One
Network.
America, yeah.
The Blaze Network is there. So we've left the cable news world altogether, and this is where you're going to get your news. And I've also noticed in the last probably 2 weeks is there's even more infusion to Twitter among the conservatives. So we saw a little bit of a jump to Parler, but in the last week, really over the holidays, there's a gathering, and it is a mass gathering. And I think it's just happening faster and bigger than Twitter can cancel. But we've
So you're saying that conservatives are gathering on Twitter?
conservatives are finding each other. So I mean, it's like the gathering of Israel is the gathering of conservatives on Twitter. That like they're back in full force, and Twitter accounts are encouraging other people to drop your handle so we can follow you, and so there is something of a gathering that I don't know of a different way to describe it. But I have now found my favorites on Twitter that are just go-tos for the real news and the real information that's happening around everything from the election to COVID to freedom and liberty. So it's really I haven't seen anything like it. So I've been a little bit holiday lazy obsessed with Twitter and following a bunch of what's going on, and President Trump has an incredible influence and the followers. And so while Trump is kind of the banner and is kind of the face, I think we all realize it's more than the man. It's why did we like Trump, and why do we want this election defended so badly? It's because of what he really did to preserve our freedoms and liberties and make us a stronger economy, place us back in a position of strength on the world stage. Just incredible things. And we could, in fact, we should do a podcast on just his accomplishments as president, even the last couple months. And and what I loved was most recently, even closing out the year, that he said no to the crazy out of control spending that we've had, and to once again say America first, Americans first. And we saw the crazy budget bill that had so much money going to. I posted. You can find this on my Facebook and my Twitter. About $7 million to develop a smart toilet that can detect anal prints, and that can also measure compounds in your excrement. Okay, and that was only $7 million. That was only just a little piece of that bill. But I mean, it's the shrimp on treadmills every year that we get. That's just so out of control.
I think my favorite meme the last couple of weeks has been the one that said, "Is there another country in the world that taxes its citizens to give money to America?"
I haven't seen that one, but exactly. So here we are, the president in his last days, pointing out these absurdities and saying, no, America should come first once again. So Schlichter and his number two, Donald Trump will be a kingmaker, and whether that means he runs in 2024 or not, I think a lot of people are going to rally around, if not Trump the man, Trump the essence, Trump the meaning, Trump the what he's done for us. Trump,
and you talk
Trump
about
that knows us.
You talk about all the accomplishments that the administration has made during the last 4 years, but I just think the one big accomplishment, which really wasn't policy or legislation, it was just exposing the corruption, not just in the Democrat Party, but just in the
also,
DC machine.
Right. So the deep state, the swamp. And one thing we love about him was he campaigned on draining the swamp, and he started that day one, and he continued that to the last, draining the swamp. And that has been such an incredible threat to the establishment, threat to the way things have just always been done. Foreign policy as well, foreign aid. I think that's what we really saw in this budget bill, is how far people are willing to go to protect that foreign aid. And as you know, a lot of important, prominent people are being accused of, that is, foreign aid is the way that money comes back to people like Joe Biden, things like that. So Trump is going to have a tremendous influence on, and maybe even martyr status, if he if Joe Biden is sworn in as president. And but on that note, all the more important for our states to be strong. And as I leave the legislature, I am just hoping and praying that the legislature recognizes that federalism may be more important than ever, and that they have to find the courage that sometimes they haven't always needed to have, and in this last year, collectively have not had, and individually many have not had, and our leadership has not chosen to rally strength around the legislature. So I'm hoping as I leave, because goodness knows if I was still there, I would be fighting and kicking and screaming every bit of the way to make sure that we maintain our strength as a state and push back where we need to. The things that President or elect Biden, if I don't even want to call him that still, but the thing that Joe Biden has promised is that he would start day one rolling back some of the fundamental protections that Trump restored. And so the state's just going to have to be very strong. And I may be leaving the legislature, but I won't be leaving it alone. And so number one of Schlichter's is Grandpa Badfinger will not be president next New Year's Eve. So that's an interesting thing. Anyway, I love this part. He says, dishonorable mentions include my prediction of the epic suck-uppening to China and to Iran and to every other American-hating nest of scumbags around the globe, as well as our government once again listening to creepy Swedish urchins about the climate hoax and its inevitable focus on trying to silence and disenfranchise us. But here's one more prediction. We will win. Maybe not in 2021, but mark my words, the side of freedom and justice cannot lose. Victory is coming. And he says, we can hold him to it. So I'm going to reach out to Kurt and see if he would ever come on our little Utah podcast here. But he's one of my favorite witty guys, author of a number of fiction books that have conservative themes. And so we'll list some of that up for you, put some of those on the screen and how you can find those. I haven't read one, but now that I'm familiar with his work and his words that are just amazing, he's on my book list now. Okay. All right, so we have a very special guest with us tonight. This is actually the Salt Lake Tribune's 2020 Person of the Year. Among dozens of nominees, this nominee ended up with, I think more than double the votes of the next highest vote getter. And don't know if you've ever heard of this guy. His name is, welcome him on right now, Eric Moutsos.
I'm wearing when you're Person of the Year, you have to kind of go incognito into places.
Yeah, are you getting just swarmed for your autograph?
It's amazing. It's people. I have to hide in my own house.
In your own house. No, you have to hide. You have to hide in your own house because there's a pandemic that you are following the orders very, very carefully and the recommendations very carefully to always wear a mask, social distance, don't go anywhere.
Don't question anything.
Don't question
for yourself.
Authority. This is Eric. Don't question authority, Moutsos, as everybody knows. Well, okay. So, Eric, there are so many things we can talk about. But by the way, congratulations for being Person of the Year.
I did. No, you know that they took it from me, right?
No.
Oh yeah.
What?
Oh yeah. They didn't give it to me. They just they did a bait and switch. They said Salt Lake Tribune readers nominate but then they actually gave it to healthcare workers officially.
You're kidding.
No.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I mean, the vote means nothing, and it just
Okay,
goes
so then
along.
the
It just
Salt
goes,
Lake Tribune readers.
yeah, yes.
Eric was as person of the year. Okay, so yeah, I hadn't heard like was there a formal award ceremony, but I had heard that yeah that you had won that and wow. Okay, but okay, so we do appreciate and honor our healthcare workers as well. So there's so many things we can talk about.
Especially the ones that do TikTok videos on while
Stop.
during the pandemic.
We haven't done those locally, have we?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh gosh. Okay. Okay. Well, I don't know. Sometimes you got to take a break too, and do what you can to cope with the circumstances. But so there's so many things we can talk about. And Eric, you have your own. You do frequent Facebook lives. You're prolific in social media. You have a book. You have a movie. And tell us real quick about your movie.
Well, it's called Non-Essential. You can well, I don't even know how it came together so quickly. I met a guy named Steve Sorensen that came to our first rally. He did this cool footage with a drone and Metallica music that was a couple minutes long. We met up and he said, "Hey, I want to film these events." And because I was planning on we weren't planning on stopping until the government stopped, which unfortunately they're not going to stop, so neither am I. And Steve said, "Hey, I want to film these," and then he started talking about putting it in a documentary form, and it's been amazing. Like he's dedicated this entire year to trying to film this and to go to all of our events. And so now what we're doing is we're going and showing this film all around the state of Utah. We just got invited to Idaho. We got invited to Missouri. We got invited to Arizona. And the film is called Non-Essential, and it just goes to show like the hypocrisy of the government. Especially we highlight the Utah government, how hypocritical they've been, just about what's essential, what's not essential, etc.
Okay, so congratulations on all of that as well. And you have some really awesome cameos, people featured.
Like you, yep.
And those
Twice. You're no. Are you 3 times or
I think
because
I
a
think
lot of
twice.
people, some of your listeners might not know, but Kim was my representative up in West Jordan, and that's when I got to know and love her because she was fantastic. She understood what was happening. She was one of the only ones that was pushing against these narratives, and some of these bills that come in, and so that's where I really really respect Kim Coleman, and I'm excited for whatever she's going to do. I believe that her race was messed up by Dominion. That's just my personal belief. So you don't have to say anything, Kim, but I think the entire Dominion is exactly what Donald Trump says it is. It's a hoax. It's a lie. I don't think Spencer Cox won. I think once it got exposed, the left in Utah, they started scrambling. And that's why you saw Burgess win, because I think they were going to take it from Burgess Owens as well. But then they were like, oh crap. And so that's just my take.
Well, there's so much of this we may never know, but definitely on the main stage right now is the presidential election, and was that race stolen? And before you were on, we did cover that topic pretty well about the steal and efforts to stop the steal. And I'm fully on board with believing that nefarious things happened from hard voter fraud with fake ballots to the tech insertion of how ballots are tabulated inside of these machines. So let's talk about what, like you just mentioned, you have this documentary. You're kind of on the road sharing this documentary that documents how Utahns responded to not just coronavirus, but coronavirus mandates, regulations, and this was just such a natural space for you, and I think that was a natural space for me to be concerned about how the government will start to restrict our lives. And of course, I ran for Congress in the last 2 years, and that was a common theme for my campaign, is to make sure we have separation of powers, that government can exercise, one branch of government can exercise a check on the other, and that's how we, the people, stay really in the power seats, and that the government stays a government of the people, for the people, by the people, is when we can exercise those checks. And then coronavirus happens, and then we saw how quickly that was thrown to the wind. And we saw our governor take over legislative authority. We saw the legislature go to their knees on it. And a number of us in the legislature, as much as we pushed to, no, governor, stop. You have 30 days. You're done. The governor said, oh, yeah, whatever. And the legislature said, okay.
That's
are
right.
you kidding?
Well, it's because, you know this better than anyone, but most politicians, I would say 90% plus, the reason why they're in it to begin with is for them. They're the sole thing that they care about is their career and how they're going to get elected again, because they're not in it for the people. They don't care.
So I'm going to defend colleagues that I've spent last 6 years with. I would say some of them. That's true for some of them. And I think you almost know them instantly. Okay.
Where are they?
So here's what I want to talk with you about, because people know what you have to say, and people know what I have to say on mask mandates, government regulations. So I want to drill down on the very thing you just said. Where are they? And so there's an article that is really, really good. Now, if I am citing an article, it means it's really good, because I can't tell you. People send me stuff all day, all the time. I read through so much. But if I've screened this out and this is good, it's good. So this is found at fee.org, FEE.org. I've posted it on my social media as well. And this article is, the title is Why Most Fell for the Lockdowns While a Few Stood for Liberty. And this just came out on New Year's Eve and written by Dan Sanchez. There are such amazing nuggets in this. It's sort of an anthropological, sociological, psychological examination of really that question. Why did so many fall for the regulations while a few stood for freedom? And so, Eric, I don't know how great you are as a person, but I will tell you that you are a symbol of a lot of things. So you are awesome in and of yourself, but you have come to be a symbol for many people, and I think this is why you had the nomination and the votes of the Salt Lake Tribune readers. Plus, now you made me have to go read the Salt Lake Tribune to vote for you. Your reach is tremendous. Your influence is tremendous. But like a lot of people, it's more than just you. You've really just become symbolic of some things that we care about, and that you carry the message. And it's really never truly been about a mask. It's never truly been about
a vaccine or social distancing.
It's just so much bigger than that. But sometimes the mask argument, the mask debate is really sort of the tangible thing that we can wrap our brains around and discuss, but it's so much more than that. And so I'm going to ask you to go and read this article. There's just so many truisms in it.
I just shared it on the Utah Business Revival from your page.
Perfect.
And then when you said I think the reason why people are starting to come to our events and all these things, it has nothing to do with any individual. It has everything to do with the principles that we're talking about. Because when you stand on correct principles, that's what matters. It's that I believe when we move past this life and into the next one, the question is going to be, okay, did you stop it? It's not going to be, did you stop it? The question is going to be, what did you stand for? Because that's my take. And so following your heart is number one. So when you get ideas and okay, what can I do? What can I do? And when you have these ideas that are very scary sometimes, especially when you're speaking out against the narrative, that's what you have to do, in my opinion. You have to just follow your conscience and do it, and then let the consequences follow.
Okay, so then why did this stuff happen? Because we're talking about good people. And Eric, we're talking about good people that care about freedom and liberty too, right? We have parents that care about their kids and the atrocities of the policies that have happened around our children. But so I'm gonna just read a couple parts in this. But for everything that 2020 was, the rise of the pandemic lockdowns will go down as the most momentous. Never before have the day-to-day lives of so much of humanity been so radically upended. And outside of wartime, never before has there been such a widespread and extreme rollback of human freedom. And how did it all happen so fast? Why did people give in so quickly to such a sweeping assault on liberty, even in America, the land of the free? Wow. In a word, they let their guard down. They stopped
or their guard
being
was never
vigilant.
Up. Or their guard was never up.
Or their guard was never up. But you know what? All of a sudden, even if your guard wasn't up, even if you weren't a liberty freedom fighter like you and I have been for, so much of our lives anyway, the government said, go home, stay there, shut your business down, lose your livelihood, try to make sense of what's going on with your kids and education. And when you go out, stay away from people. Let your elderly parent die alone. I mean, the craziest things. So much of society has said, okay, because you said so. So what this article is about, again, is sort of that anthropological, sociological, psychological examination of why. How did we do that? And by the way, we did it overnight. I mean, we did it instantly. It wasn't even a gradual.
Well, it's because it was planned. This has been planned for a long time. And look, I'm not just talking about, I don't want to go into conspiracy theories. I want to go into the spiritual nature of what's happening. This isn't just a war from China and Russia and the United States of America, all the communists that have infiltrated media and Hollywood and large corporations for so many years. This has been set from the beginning of time. And that's what people need to understand. If you believe that there's a spiritual war going on, that's exactly what's happening. And Kim, have you ever had something in your life happen where you know that God was in the details years before? It's almost like he set something up here and you saw the fruits here and you're like, how did God do that?
Yeah.
Okay. The devil works the same way. People don't understand that this is good and evil. This is light and darkness.
Okay. So let's maybe save that, because I'm with you on that. I do believe that. I mean, everything from, absolutely what you're saying. But let's stick to sort of the more, well, I don't even know that you can tease them out, because really it is. It's good versus evil. It just really is.
It is.
Okay,
and
but
it's light and darkness. So when
but
you get afraid, what's taking over? Is it the darkness or is it the light?
That's right. So I totally agree with you. But so I want to kind of stick to the points of this article, because they're really fantastic to help, even if you're not a person of faith, to understand why we just so quickly just went, okay, yes, sir, may I have another? How do we do that? And there's some, throughout all time, I mean, throughout millennia, there have been the dragons, and this is a Jordan Peterson reference, that there is the dragon that the village has to come together and defend against, and we lock ourselves down and we all war against the dragon. Well, this is our dragon. And for whatever portion of it is the mythology that controls people, it's the method that's been there forever, and it shows its head ever so often. And whether this is, in Third Reich, World War II, or centuries ago, this is our time where we have this thing happening, and that tyranny can latch onto that and exploit that, or tyranny uses it in the very first place. And so I want to just quote a couple of things. One of the things they talk about is that the government really tries to control so much. And I'm just not going to do justice to this article. But we have a governor who surrounded himself with about 20 or so people who are experts and said, okay, here is the brain trust of all we need to know and all the ways we need to act is right here. And what happened is the governor very literally left the people out. And what arrogance has to exist to believe that you captured all the knowledge to be had to understand the crisis, to understand the threat, and to understand the response. And so as conservatives, we frequently reject a lot of centralization. We like government closer to the people. And yet with this pandemic, we centralize this about as central as you can get in the state. And we centralized it in a one-man office with his advisors and said nobody else has anything to give. And that never works. It never works. And then the next response to that is tyranny. Is since we are the experts and we have all the knowledge, you all have to be quiet and we have to shut you down. And and that's not enough. We're not just going to keep you out. And by the way, as a state legislator, we are the voice of the people. That is our moniker, Vox Populi, voice of the people. So when the legislature was left out, the people were left out. And how absolutely arrogant is it for one governor to believe he captured all the knowledge of how to understand the virus and how to respond to it in his little office with his little 27 advisors.
Well, and how many of those 27 advisors are actually believe in the Constitution, are talking about the Constitution? Well, most of them are progressives. They're leftists.
But we've been saying this for a long time. As policymakers around COVID, it should not just be the health aspects. There needs to be the economic aspects, the emotional aspects that we should, like even the in the article states that, we didn't even give people choices. We didn't give great grandma the choice to say and choose, I'd rather die with my family from COVID.
That's right.
Than die alone. And
amen.
And that the government was that arrogant to believe, and here's the quote, I want to use it because it is really it's a great quote. To reject the lockdowns is not to reject science. It is to recognize that science is not omniscience and that central planning amounts to an arrogant pretense to godlike knowledge. We have 3 million people in this state, and a lot of people know a lot of stuff, but not only were they left outside of the 27 experts, they were vilified, like you, mocked, marginalized, social media shut down, canceled. So,
well, and I would even look at this: to reject the lockdowns is not to reject science. Who's making up science? In March, Dr. Fauci said that masks don't, in fact, work. In fact, he said they make it worse. You're touching your mask. You're not breathing properly. You're not breathing in air. So I would say, in my opinion, to reject the lockdowns is to. It's not the science has nothing to do with the science. We're making it worse by doing what we're doing. Our bodies were intended; they were created with an immune system to fight off viruses, even if it's a man-made virus in a a lab. Our bodies were meant to fight those off at 99.9%. I mean, could you imagine if we had a virus at 99.7%? What kind of tyranny would come into play?
Okay, so Eric, you want to throw a whole bunch of numbers and data at me, okay? And there are people who can throw a lot of numbers and data back at you. Mm-hmm. And we definitely have disputing camps on the science. What this article emphasizes is everybody should be in the debate, really. Mm-hmm. And that it shouldn't be the centralized sort of, top down. I think one thing Trump did really well was he said, I'm going to exercise my muscle and my influence to get vaccines done. But hey, states, you can way better handle what needs to happen from there than the federal government. But then when we got to the state, we said, okay, no, we're going to have a 27-person smoking room, and we're going to decide everything and leave the collective knowledge of the state. And so I'm getting a little bit theoretical on you, Eric, and less actual, debate on some of the science. I want to just talk about what then happens. And if I can keep my phone open long enough. Okay.
Well, and I was going to say really quick, I was going to say this really fast, Kim. Even if masks did work, which I don't believe they do, even if social distancing did work, even if the vaccines did work, that the government has no place to do what they're doing. It's kind of like saying, well, if you go with the beginning of time, if the beginning of time was, hey, there were two different plans, and to me, I know I get into this stuff, I'm trying not to get off topic too much, but what was it that Satan wanted? Okay. He's going to force everyone to heaven. So my point that I'm trying to make is this, okay, is that even if they did work, the government has no place to force somebody against their will.
Okay, so right there, you stated kind of some generally conservative principles. Not a proper role of government. Government's not the right place to do this. But even underpinning that is why. Why do conservatives take a position of government shouldn't do that? Well, there are reasons. And so I'm going to read another line from this article. There is a common false assumption that government is humanity's only source of agency and that the only form of planning is central planning. And so we understand as conservatives that we don't like the central planning. We like the government closest to the people. But why? Why do we say that? Well, because anecdotally, they're just not that good at it, and government closest to the people. But it's even just more than that. That the article points out, there is just inherent in humanity collective knowledge and individual knowledge, and we have it all through our communities. And I'll give you an example. There's a lady named Danielle Barani. You might want to follow her on social media too. She has been advocating for people with Down syndrome being at the top of the list of vaccinations. She's raising a daughter who has Down syndrome, but she could not find the list. She couldn't find how to get on it. But shockingly, she found out that even advocates for people with disabilities and education and in health, nobody knew. They didn't even know that people with Down syndrome have a 10 times higher rate of dying from COVID. I mean, she lives every day in absolute fear of her daughter getting the disease. I don't. My kids don't have, most of my kids, I have one that I have some concern about, but most of my kids, I'm not living day to day afraid that this thing is going to come into my home and a kid is going to die. She does. But here is this lady who early on went to the governor's office and said, let me help. I'm a 9/11 first responder. I have knowledge, I have information, I have capacity, I have qualifications, I have abilities. Let me help. And she was shooed off. And yet she had to bring to the awareness of the coronavirus task force that people with Down syndrome belong at the top of the list. So that's just kind of an anecdotal example of sometimes we just have people in our communities that know stuff. But when your government, your tendency sometimes is to ignore and reject, and when you're not doing so well, the next tendency is to clamp down and restrict and control, and that's what we've seen. And luckily,
and send out text messages. On Sunday at 9:30 at night, scaring everyone.
Saying
it's unbelievable.
And so then there's another, like, this is maybe my favorite part of this. So in addition to the false assumption that government is humanity's only source of agency and planning, there is another common false assumption, and that is that government is humanity's only source of coordination. We are people. We are amazingly equipped to work together. Whether it's our street, and in a story that a lot of people are familiar with in my life, whether it's the drug dealer on the corner, getting rid of him, or whether it's improving, bringing improvements to our schools, whatever it is, we are amazing. Making fire, gathering food. Anciently, we are amazingly equipped to coordinate together, to work together. And for the government to think that we can't do that unless the government tells us how is not only antithetical to what we are as human beings, but it's personally offensive. And and we need to be careful that people look to government to say, hey, tell us what to do next. We really don't always need to do that. So, Eric, aside from just what does the science say about masks, what have you seen about the ability of people to work together in amazing ways without the government telling us to?
Well, I'll give you an example with the Utah Business Revival. I created that group back in, I want to say April, and everything has been voluntary. The entire thing. Every one of our events is free. Every one of our events is free to the vendors, the businesses that come, and it's been everybody who believes what we believe coming together and saying, hey, I can help with this, I can help with this, I can help with this, donating things, like helping. And we've gotten off like 8 business revivals. We put on the first concert, American concert since COVID, and most of that was all voluntary. And so, in my opinion, it's people coming together with what they believe and taking action. We are the answer to this. The American people are the answer, and until people understand that they're the ones in charge, not the government, we're not going to take control of it. Like Iron County. Look at Iron County, for example. You've got Paul Cousins. You've got his county commissioners. You've got the mayor. You've got the sheriff down there. And you know what they're saying? We're done. All businesses are open. There's no mask mandates. That's how we're going to do it. And Herbert hates it. Herbert lashed out at the sheriff down there for not, enforcing these unconstitutional mask mandates. So that's why we have to elect good representatives. That's why elections matter. Because
absolutely. But I would say that what concerns me equally is we are talking about tyranny. We're talking about government force. But sometimes, and more, maybe even more often than not, some of this comes from a place of people meaning to do well. They really do mean to do good and do well.
Right,
and
right.
And it's just misguided. And I think that's...
I would agree. I would agree.
And
it's like when church leaders, they'll send out a thing saying you don't love someone if you don't wear a mask. I believe that's coming from a place of kind of panic, like, so I'm going to put this out, when in reality, that doesn't mean that it's true, because I don't wear the mask, but I still love you. I still love people. Do you know what I'm saying? So I think you're right. But that's usually how control and tyranny happens, all in the name of health and safety, when in reality they don't understand their role.
And but we are really amazing as humans coming together. And that doesn't mean it's without leadership, because, I mean, definitely you've displayed leadership and you've helped, coordinate. But all human coordination does not have to come from the government. All human solutions do not have to come from the government. We are amazingly equipped to do this in communities. And so I think as much as we see across the world, the virus is going to virus. We've seen very different outcomes from societies, states, cities that have had all kinds of variants on the levels of lockdown and economic shutdowns, mask mandates. And what I love about this article, and again, go read that at fee.org, and it's been shared, is recognizing that, first of all, don't turn to the government. They're really not the best to solve our problems, but the government has put itself out there as no, listen to us. We are the experts. And when I say that there's such a level of arrogance, I'm not saying that means they're bad people. I'm saying that there's a little bit of sometimes some certain personality types or even history, just that's sometimes just a tendency in government and among some government officials to want to clamp down, restrict, control. And frankly, some of our elected officials are afraid of a lot of blame. You've got President Trump, who is lauded for being so successful at responding and shutting down travel from China and then getting this vaccine out. But then you've got another side that says, oh no, he's responsible for killing almost 500,000 people. And so lawmakers, sometimes they do things out of fear of blame as well. And well, if I don't do enough, people are going to say I didn't do enough. But the reality is government's not the best place to do it. And the best thing government can do is understand that, is recognize that, and expand the pool of knowledge. And that's what was so absolutely wrong about shutting down the legislature, is because then you relegated all knowledge to one person and his 27 advisors rather than 3 million people in a state.
Well, and it's unconstitutional.
And it's unconstitutional.
Yeah, and it's immoral. Like, you cannot have liberty without morality. People think that freedom and liberty are the same thing, and they're not. Because you can have your freedom and make poor decisions, and that equals bondage. That's where we're in right now. We're in bondage. And that's because that immorality from the government, that's the reason why. Now, if you have freedom plus morality, that equals liberty. Freedom plus morality equals liberty. And right now we don't have liberty because it's immoral what the government has done. And it's immoral for people that know they should be standing up that aren't standing up. It's immoral. And that's why we're suffering right now.
And that's right. And so someone asked me today, what really should happen here. And the article says, this is a quote from Mises: the alternative is not plan or no plan. The question is, who's planning? Should each member of society plan for himself, or should the paternal government alone plan for all? The issue is not automatism versus conscious action. It is spontaneous action of each individual versus the exclusive action of the government. It is freedom versus government omnipotence, and that really this, in reality, humanity engages in mass cooperation to solve incredibly complex problems without central planning every single day. And that the very essence, I think, as the article wraps up, is trust humanity. We've got lots of humanity in history to say not to trust humanity, but really we have the incredible capacity as humans to, in a free society, and trusting each other to do better than the omniscient, all-knowing, all-powerful government. And I think ultimately, Eric, that's been your mission is not, it's really not just about a mask.
Nothing. It doesn't have it. Look, if it has nothing, it's about our freedom, and it's about like what should have happened back in March. I mean, I just commented on Debbie Dujanovic's thing about these numbers, right? If we would have allowed everybody to go and get this thing at the very beginning, like we should have, just like any other cold, and helped, older people, not force them, but said, hey, this is coming, so we're going to help you while we go out and get this, because we know now that 99.9% of people are going to be just fine, maybe even higher than 99.9. We did it the exact opposite way. It should have been a memo. Governor Herbert should have sent out a memo that said, hey, this virus is coming out. This is what we know. These are our recommendations. Go and live your lives. For the people that are vulnerable, the people who have these health issues, we strongly recommend you stay in your house. That's what should have happened. But instead, we went the wrong way. And that's what I'm trying to do to wake people up. So our documentary, Kim, that I was telling you about, Non-Essential, you can go and watch the trailer at nonessentialfilm.com. And then you can come to our events. Just follow my page. You can follow Utah Business Revival to see where we're going to be doing this throughout the winter. And then I'm going to release it basically to the masses as soon as it starts, probably within the next month or two. Anyway, I just wanted to put that out there because
thank you.
we need to wake people up, and we need to be a whole nother voice. I understand that people call us like this fringe radical group that want to gather and hang out with our family and hug each other. I mean, we're the radicals now, but there's a lot of people that believe the way that we believe, and so we have to come together in our specific group.
Okay, so I have a request from Danielle, who is trying to advocate for people with Down syndrome who really do have an exponentially greater risk of dying if they get COVID. She was absolutely livid at seeing that IHC offered 15,000 doses to all of their employees because they had extra. And she said, seriously? I'm waiting. We're waiting. We've been in a house for 10 months. And we're hanging on every day to find out when we get our vaccine. So Danielle said, ask Eric, would he advocate for my daughter to get the vaccine and get on the list because you have influence. She said, would he use his influence to advocate that my daughter, who's most likely to die from this, can get on a list and get her vaccine?
This is the first, number one, this is the first that I've heard about it, okay? The very first I've heard about Down syndrome 10 times more.
Yep.
How many vaccines have worked for a cold strand? That's what I want to know. Because everything that I'm reading is that a vaccine doesn't even stop a cold. It can't.
Okay, so
number one, does a vaccine even work? So I want to look at all those. So you can give her my number and we'll talk about it.
Okay,
because
that's not what I'm asking. That we have put a lot of money as a country into getting a vaccine, and we've said we're going to put high-risk people first. But IHC gave it to their accountants before they gave it to her daughter. Would you advocate for her?
Yeah. IHC is corrupt. When we see the dust settled and we see how corrupt this has been with IHC and Herbert and the state of Utah, I'm telling you, if I was a sheriff somewhere, I would arrest these people. I would arrest them. And so, yes, tell your friend, I want to see all the data. I want to look at it. I want to see who's pushing what. But
I will send you the data.
Kim,
good data that people with Down syndrome have a 10 times greater chance of dying.
That may be true.
Would you advocate for her that she can get the vaccine, should get the vaccine before an accountant at IHC who never sees people?
Look, if it was true, absolutely.
Okay,
absolutely.
That's it. That's what I want. Okay, I'm going to leave. I'm going to give you the last word after this quote from the article. We know this. The price of liberty is eternal vigilance, and vigilance against tyranny requires a faith in free people informed by economic understanding.
I love it.
That's the final word in this article. That go read it. It's really worth your 9 minutes. Eric, what would you like to finish with?
Well, for me, it would take about 18 minutes to read an article just because my ADD is so bad. And look, I just want to say this, like the most important thing that we have to keep in perspective, okay? I believe this earth life is a test. It's not about a mask, not about like we talked about. It's about, do we still love the people that we disagree with? Do we still love? That's the test. I'm telling you right now, whether we're right or we're wrong on this division, do we still love those that we don't agree with? And that's what we have to keep into our hearts, because I believe we're going into some very, very dark times. And to quote Joe Biden, and people are going to be wishing that we went back to 2020 in 2021. I don't like to say that. I'm not a doom and gloom. I hope I'm wrong with all of this, but we are not headed in the right direction at all. And so we just have to prepare ourselves. We have to get straight with God. We have to be straight with our families, our communities, and because I believe it's going to go local really quick, and we have to love each other. And so that's my final message.
Well, and I do know that about you. I do know that your motivation ultimately, why freedom matters, why liberty matters, is ultimately your love of your neighbor. And all of this is about keeping them free and strong. And then I have observed you have your opinions, absolutely, and you can argue and you can debate, but you definitely have charity and love for people you disagree with, and I like to think that that's one of my aspirations as well. Something I think we always have to work on to get better at that. And the more divisive we become, the more it challenges that. But underlying everything is that ethos. So,
and with our families, you know how many families are divided? I just read a post where this girl, she said, my dad's not coming to my wedding because he's afraid of the thing, and now they're fighting. You know, I've never ever even argued with my in-laws for 17 years that I've been married. And now there's this huge division because, you know, I'm a bad person because I don't want to wear a mask. And it's like, my goodness.
well, I think the heart of evil is also dividing families too. So that's another topic. But anyway, hey, have a happy New Year. Do you have a resolution you want to share?
Oh, I want to get back down to like 10% body fat. You know, I'm like at 15 or 16 now, so I've got to get with the program.
All right. Well, you have a sister out there that caught my attention, Casey Mutzos Pace. I got to figure out what she's doing.
Yeah, the mini beast. Yeah, our family, we're kind of crazy. We I don't know, we're kind of all the same. It's weird.
Well, she's amazing. So that's my goal for 2020 is to have Casey kick my butt, get in shape. Anyway, thanks so much, Eric, for your time. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, Kim, thank you. I wish that more people were like you in positions that you have, and I'm behind you 100%.
Thank you. Alrighty, well, thank you so much for joining us on Candidly Kim podcast. You can find us on Podbean, YouTube, where else? I forget them all. iTunes, Rumble. We're on Rumble. And wherever you can find great podcasts and conservative podcasts, a plug for a couple of my favorites right now, the Steve Bannon War Room Pandemic, and a few more to come that we'll highlight. So thanks for joining us, and have a happy New Year.